Hello and welcome to the channel again. This is Sam trying to spin to win on Zwift. It's Tuesday. You should know what that means by now. It's another ZRL race day. Yay! Today is stage 3, a scratch race on the mighty Metropolitan course in
New York, New York.
I think this is going to be a really interesting race today. Looking forward to it. Not sure about the New York KOM, but overall the race should be fun. But as usual, before we look at the race footage, let's have a quick view at today's course, then a glance at the leaderboard after stage 2, and finally, let's have a look at the competition we're facing today.
So, what do you have for us?
Well, since you asked so nicely, let me tell you. The Metropolitan course is a really punchy one. It's only 20 kilometers long or so not very long. However, there's over 300 meters or 316 meters of climbing, I think. So it's definitely going to prove a serious challenge today. Zwift Insider estimates that at 4 watts per kilo, it will take around 33 minutes to complete the course. And I wouldn't be surprised today if we may even be a bit faster, given the likely high peloton speed. While there are a lot of lumps and bumps on the course, there are 2 key selection points in my opinion. The first comes after 3.3 kilometers, where we have around 700 meters of climbing at an average of 6.4%. You will need to be prepared to push hard here to make sure you don't lose the front group, and I wouldn't be surprised if a few riders are dropped at this point. Then, after a few more short climbs and descents, we get to the main feature of the day, the New York Reverse KOM. Please do keep in mind that the overall climb actually starts before the KOM, where we have some 300 meters of climbing at 8.3%. We then have a couple hundred meters of flat road before the KOM proper starts. The KOM is actually made up of 3 climbs in my opinion, with a couple of less steep bits in between. Keep in mind that the climbs get steeper and steeper, with the last one being over 10%. This will be the key selection point of the race. And if you're not in or very close to the front group at the top, then you're unlikely to catch back up before the race finishes. Looking at a previous race, we can see that I did the KOM itself in just under 3 minutes. And if we add the first part of the climb, plus the fact that you may have to keep pushing after the KOM banner, you're looking at a solid 5-minute effort here, if not a little bit more. And with that, I wouldn't be surprised if some riders get a 5-minute PR in this race. You will also collect the annual power-up at the KOM banner, the only power-up in this race. And then we get an opportunity to rest for a little bit.
And relax.
But the course is not over. There's still a lot of lumps and bumps in the way before we get to the finish. And this is where I think the stronger riders are really going to push the pace to wear out the others ahead of the finish. And I suppose it is possible there will be a breakaway, but I still think it's going to come down to a reduced bunch sprint in the end. And that'll take place on the nasty little 200-meter incline towards the finish. So the key, really, I think, to this course today is how you manage your effort on the New York KOM. If you can avoid spending all of your bullets there, I think you have a decent shot at the finish. Fingers crossed. Let's have a quick look at the overall leaderboard. After 2 races, my team, Swedish Zwifters Mimmer, is in 10th spot. It would be good if we can move up a spot or 2 after this race, especially if we are to finish around mid-table at the end of the season, but the competition is really tough for our lineup, although we will give it our best for sure. Here is the screenshot of the Velo ratings just before we started. I think there were actually a few more rider changes between this screenshot and the actual race, but in general, I hope this gives you a good picture of the strength of the field. A lot of the names were of course the same as for the prior race, and as we will see at the finish, the Velo ratings are pretty good at predicting where you will end up. For me, I'm in 11th place, so I set myself the same goal as in last week's race, That is, a top 20 finish would be good, with the top 10 being a stretch goal, if you will. The key deciding factor of this race is the New York KOM Reverse, and if I don't make it over with the front group there, I think I can kiss those goals goodbye, I think. With that, let's see how today's race panned out.
Let's race.
Given this race is quite short, it ended up taking only 28.5 minutes in the end, I thought I'd try something different and show the whole race this time. I will speed it up quite a bit in places and slow down in others when something interesting, at least to me, was happening. As we watched the start of the race, my tactics were pretty straightforward today. I wanted to make sure I stayed with the front group up the New York KOM Reverse, and after that I would try to save as much energy as possible for the sprint. But I would be alert for a possible breakaway, and I would jump on that train if needed. The start was hard, but not crazy fast. A few guys were pushing the pace though, and you can see that the peloton is strung out quite a bit. But I just stayed towards the front and drafted as much as I could. I think 1 or 2 riders may have had a small gap, but nothing to worry about this early in the race. We then get to the first major feature, the punchy climb, which starts at 3.3 kilometers. It's only 700 meters long, but it is quite steep, and I was preparing myself for a major push here. We can see that at the start we are around 67 riders in the peloton, and I expected a few people to get dropped here. With legs still relatively fresh, we all pushed pretty hard here. Looking back at the footage, I was between 5.5 and 6 watts per kilo for the whole climb, which lasted about 1.5 minutes. And as we get to the top, we can see that the peloton is really strung out. As we start to descend, the front group is now down to 49 riders, so almost 20 riders were dropped here. We immediately hit another small bump, and the pace is still high, but then it slows a bit as we get to the upper level of the course. While my average is around 300 watts at this point, I'm still feeling relatively fresh, and I just keep drafting to save as much energy as I can for the larger upcoming climb. As we get to the next set of lumps and bumps, the pace picks up a bit again, but I find that I can rest quite a bit here as long as you time your efforts correctly. That is, pick up the speed at the bottom of these dips, push hard for a little bit, and by then you're up on the flat again. The pace stays high as we slowly descend towards the New York KOM Reverse, but in the last kilometer or so, everybody seemed to sit up in order to prepare for the upcoming effort. This coming climb is the key part of the race, and if you're not with the front group as we pass through the KOM banner at the top, it is highly unlikely you will be able to fight for the top spots. So I was preparing myself for an all-out effort here if needed. I'm not sure how you guys approach these situations, but for me at least, I imagine that the top of the climb is the end of my race. Now, while I don't want to spend all my bullets here if I can avoid it, I am prepared to do so in case needed. And you need to evaluate how you're getting on as you progress up the climb. The little climb before the KOM proper is quite steep, and we all pushed hard here. You can see that the peloton is really strung out right away, and as we start on the KOM proper, I am towards the front. I'm still trying to draft here, as even on the steeper bits there's around 10 to 20 watts of savings, but if I have to eat a bit of wind here, so be it. I do not want to lose the front here. As we get to the second step of the climb, if you will, I'm still in a good position. There is one rider off the front, but I'm not worried about that at this point. I just want to stay towards the front though, in case there is a significant split taking place behind me. The power stays high, and as we get to the final little flat section, I'm still in a good place. This is where I was prepared to go all out if needed. But the riders around me didn't go as hard as I feared, so while I was tired as we passed the KOM banner, I still had a bit left in the tank. I did set a new personal best on the KOM though, 2 minutes and 40 seconds, with just under 400 watts average. I'm pretty happy with that, especially since I think I could have gone a bit faster if needed. I am able to get a bit of rest on the descent. A lot of people use their anvil power-ups here, but I decided to keep mine as I felt I could keep up without having to push too hard being a slightly heavier rider. We can also see that, as expected really, the front group is now much smaller at 18 or so riders. So the race is going exactly the way I thought it would. I'm really happy to see that one of my teammates, my team captain actually, Magnus Emmott, is now with me in the front group. He had dropped off the front slightly on the climb, I think, but worked really hard on the descent to catch up, so well done to him for that effort. As we start the flattish bit after the descent, I notice one rider, Bastian Christiansen, has over a 10-second gap on the rest of us. I know also that he's a very strong rider, but I feel it is still enough time for us as a group to catch him up. I tried to draft as much as I can on the slight drag that's coming, and I'm looking out for attacks here, so I do stay towards the front. And a few riders do push the pace here. Whether that was just to hurt the legs of the other riders, or to start closing Bastian down, I don't know. But I keep plugging away to make sure I don't eat any wind here. We slowly start to gain a bit of time on Bastian in the front, but then something happened which confused me for a little bit. All of a sudden, the rider info on the right shows my teammate Niklas Wimmel at the top. In the heat of the moment, I thought it said he was 30 seconds ahead of us, since he showed up at the top of the list. But now looking back at the footage, it says he was about 30 seconds behind. A bit of a bug, I suppose, but for a second there I thought Niklas would have a really good chance of winning the race. The pace stays relatively high as we keep chasing Bastian, who, by the way, put in a really strong shift here to stay away as long as he did. We are not hanging about, so my hat is off to him for trying to stay away here. I'm almost caught off guard as we go down one of the descents at around 5 kilometers to go. All of a sudden, a few guys started to push really hard, and I had to put in a couple of digs to make sure I stayed reasonably in touch. We then get to the final climb or drag, and the pace increases again. I do not want to go all out here as we're not that far from the finish, but I still have to push reasonably hard to stay in contact with the front guys. This is also when we finally catch Bastian up with around 3 kilometers to go. The group is quite stretched out at this point, and for a second I thought there may be a bit of a split taking place, but then the pace slows down again and the group reforms. We push a bit to get over the final little bump before the longish descent towards the finish, and the group is still all together. I am now starting to prepare for the sprint, and the pace really slows down as I guess the others were thinking the same thing. At this point, I'm still feeling pretty good. I'm not fresh, of course, but I feel I should have enough energy for a reasonable sprint. And I still have my anvil power-up, which I hope will help me at this point. As we get to around 500 meters to go, I make my first mistake, of many, on this sprint. And I hit my anvil power-up probably 6 or 7 seconds or so too late. I then make my second mistake in that I don't push hard on the downhill to use the anvil fully. I thought the others went too early as the final 200 meters is uphill, but I was wrong here as others passed me. Then before I know it, we're almost at the finish line. I tried to put in a dig at the very end, but I just couldn't get the legs spinning fast enough at that point, and I run over the line in 13th place. Really annoyed with myself at that sprint, and part of my language here, that was piss poor. That was an opportunity missed for sure, and I am going to work on my sprint a bit in the next couple weeks. Not expecting to get any more power as such, but rather my technique, if you will. I do my best numbers, it seems, when I spin really, really fast, like 120 plus RPMs. But I seem to have gotten away from doing that in sprints lately, so I really need to work on that. As mentioned, I finished in 13th place, just 2 seconds behind the winner, and just ahead of my team captain Magnus Emmott. Many congratulations to our podium though. Bastian Christiansen takes the win. Clearly, he had enough power in the legs to produce a good sprint, even though he had been off the front on his own for a good while. Chapeau. His teammate Jakob Jorgensen finished in second, and Antonio Soares finished in third. Overall, I suppose a 13th place is not bad for me, but I still think this was an opportunity lost for me personally. However, I am really pleased with our effort as a team, as we finished in 5th place in this round. Top effort from the other guys in the Mimir team. Let's hope we can keep this up for the next couple of rounds. Now, just a few post-race thoughts before we wrap this vlog up. Post-race thoughts. I'll be quick today, I promise. Well, that race worked out exactly as I thought it would.
I was right!
The start was fast, but not crazy. And then we had a few kilometers to kind of get warmed up before we got to the first bump at 3.3 kilometers. Everybody went reasonably hard there. I didn't find it too bad, but there's quite a few people dropped, maybe 10 or something like that. And then the pace stayed reasonably high until we got to the bottom of the New York KOM Reverse, or even the little climb before we actually get to the KOM proper. And then obviously the speed ramped up. But again, I must admit, I found the climb wasn't too bad. Yes, I was tired at the end, but I still had a little more in the tank. And in hindsight, I wish a few more people would have gone really hard. Maybe we could have gotten a break there. But when I got towards the top, I looked on the screen and it wasn't enough of a break to kind of have a go for it. So I held off a bit at the very end of the climb, trying to save for the sprint. Then we got some rest on the descent. A few people pushed pretty hard on the various bumps and lumps after the descent. I just stayed in the group and drafted and trusted that somebody else would bring it back, and they did. Just tried to save as much energy as I could before we got to the sprint. We get to the sprint, I'm ready to go, I think. Had a bit left in the tank. I hit my power up, the anvil that I saved. I think I hit it about the right time. Started to gather some speed, and I was about to really start winding it up. And then I realized, crap, we're almost there. And then I sped up a little bit towards the end, but just ran out of road. So I completely mistimed that sprint. Whether I would have caught the guys in the front or not, who knows? But I could definitely have done a much better job there. So really annoying, especially since I had a little bit left in the tank. But schoolboy error, you live and learn. We take that on the chin and move on. I probably won't do the time trial next week. So I'll see you for ZRL stage 5 in 2 weeks time. In the meantime, there's a club ladder race tomorrow and on Thursday as well. So there'll be a few videos coming out on that if you enjoy those 5v5 fight nights. Anyway, thanks for watching if you made it this far. This is Sam, trying to spin to win on Swift, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.